Everybody, Rural Lands UK, Matt and Ash coming at you for another episode. We are not live yet on the audio pod, we're just getting set up. We are doing a little bit of news. We are looking at the final 9 games of the regular season. We're doing our deep dive in terms of how those teams might have changed, and some of them are scarier than others. And then we're going to have a look at the week 1 observations for OTAs, which is actually limited, I think, to just day 3 of OTAs, which is a real shame that the media only had access to that one day of the 3. But by the sounds of it, it might have been the most productive one, considering it was all kind of walkthroughs and day 1 and day 2 were a little bit scraggly anyway. And then we're briefly going to touch on all of the press conferences that happened this week. So we heard from Dan Campbell, Aaron Glenn, Dave Phipp, Carl Davis, Jack Campbell, CJ Moore, and Jameson Williams. I'm going to try and be, in true Roar the Lions fashion, as brief as I can. But Ash, it's been a long week, buddy. How you doing?
It has been, yeah. I'm doing okay. I've got a slight cold from work, typical, but we move. It's getting closer. I know, obviously, you think this Sunday just gone marked the halfway point between the Super Bowl and the Sunday openers. So we're officially halfway there now with the Bon Jovi point of the off season. We're halfway there. We can smell football on the horizon.
Should have called this episode "Living on a Prayer." That would have been so much better. Let's do that. Let's just call it that.
Okay.
Not that your title was bad. That you've come up with a better title.
It was bad.
It was bad. Oh, you guys know what to do in terms of questions for the show and all that sort of stuff. I did overlook some people last week, and I want to make amends. Obviously, if they don't listen right now and don't go back to it, then that's unfortunate. But there we go. I just want to make sure I didn't miss anyone on YouTube. What I did miss was Jeremy on Pride of Detroit. Apologies to Jeremy, who did resubscribe on Twitch for 23 months, said 17-0 this time last week. Sorry, missed it. My bad. This is what happens when you don't take breaks dedicated to having to go through all of the alerts that you had to have done, because we are fortunate in that we have as few alerts as that we do, that we can do it as we go. They don't have that luxury. But there we go. Thanks to everyone for getting your comments in early doors. Danny Mack, redeemed hydrate. I certainly am doing that with my pint of Guinness at the moment.
Yeah, I'm drinking Lilt, or whatever they call it these days, because it's not called Lilt anymore. It's like Fanta, pineapple, and grapefruit.
Yeah, it's good stuff, though. I love that. And hello to everyone in the YouTube chat as well. Danny Mack is there as well. Teardrop Floyd, hope you're doing well, man. Says, good evening, gentlemen. Top 10 defense in the offing Lombardi on the way. I hope you're right. Lisa Di Lorenzo, Chrome, Grand Eyes at 12, all in the building at the moment. If you want to get a shout out, come and say hi. And we're going to get started in just a few moments. I don't think we've had much news beyond what I've listed. Ash, you would have put it in there already anyway.
I would have put it, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I've gone way too long on the press conferences. Never mind, it's a bloody essay. What are we doing next week, actually? That has to be a thought. We're into June, so I could potentially talk about quiz.
Yes.
I don't know. Are you doing anything next Saturday?
As in the... Hang on, let's have a look.
As in the evening, next Saturday?
Hey. I might be. Let me just see, because it
doesn't have to be next Saturday. I just know that you are quite keen.
Yes, so the thing was I can be back for about 7, let's say, because the game day's in Coventry, so it's an hour's drive away.
Okay, maybe I'll defer it to the week after that. Get started on the 8th. Do 8th, 22nd, 6th. And 20th. Yeah, that would take us to the end of July. That would be 4. That would give us a grand final winner. Okay, cool. That makes sense. So I've got just under 2 weeks. So I can probably have all of them made. I've got my trivia books coming in, so because I've made them all up so far. So only 20 questions, by the way. Yes, that is one of the ones I have.
I've been scrubbing up on it just in case.
I'm sure you have. Hello to Tafka Day as well. Says a bit off topic, but Bill Walton passed away from cancer age 71. Pretty sad. I really likes that wacky hippie guy. I must admit that he just predates my American sports fandom, and my history knowledge doesn't go back that far either. Obviously, I've seen some of the kind words and obituaries of him, or not obituaries, but you know what I mean, like the references to him, eulogies. That's the word I meant. Yes, so I have seen more, but any knowledge on your part?
Unfortunately, not no same. Predates my fandom, and as much as I'm trying to get back and watch some like the old stuff, I haven't seen much of it, unfortunately. So obviously, it's sad he's passed away, had a big impact, but yeah, I think it's just a bit too far out of our reach, unfortunately.
Also, Chrome has said, "Where's Ant-Man?" So Ant-Man is taking an extended break from the show. I think because he does the college show and he does the main show all the way through the season, that he gets quite affected by how much work he has to put in, and basically taking a long holiday from doing it all really benefits him when it comes to going into the season. I don't think he's going to be away for too much longer, but it really is on him just to say when he is ready and kind of is feeling the itch to come back and talk Lions and talk college sports. And I know that he's doing a lot of prep as well, even though he's not talking about it, but doing a lot of prep for the college show in terms of getting the conferences right. And I mean, it all pays dividends when the guys that they're talking about, the guys the Lions end up drafting. I mean, their hit rate has been absolutely fantastic over there. So, you know, it pays off, but it's a shame. And I miss him being on this show because he's a good guy to chew the fat with. And he's much funnier than I am. So, you know, it can be a little bit dry without him, but, you know, never mind. Lisa says, everyone deserves a break. I generally only take breaks myself when I go on holiday, but that's only because I don't have to do anywhere near as much research as he does for it, so it doesn't derail my life as much, I would say. Yeah. But, you know, there we go. We move. Walton was most known for his dominance at college at UCLA under John Wooden. Injuries kind of derailed his pro career, unfortunately. Yes, I did see that. He only played 44% of regular season games or something like that, which is pretty nuts. That he was eligible for, I am presuming. Right, yeah. I was going to have a look at what we were doing next week, because I actually just don't remember. Pod Diary says... Oh, I've got to arrange a round table for next week if I can. Ugh. Oh, and then we don't have anything for the week after because it was meant to be the trivia quiz on the Monday, and I don't want to run it on a pod show, so we need to come up with a topic for the 10th.
Okay, I might be able to get something for that. I will be speaking to certain people about that certain British topic that I've been saying for a while.
Cool.
But if there's an opening on the 10th, I might be able to say to them, can you do something on the 10th?
Yeah, cool. Cool Down Rap, subscribing with Prime. Subscribe for 22 months on a 14-month streak. Appreciate you, man. Thank you very much. All right, let's get this show on the road, because otherwise we will be here for a long time. And don't want to keep you too long. I'm hoping also the stream holds out, because I'm streaming this at the highest quality possible as compared to normal, which means you see us in delightful 4K, but it does mean that there's a slight delay on the stream, and it also means that the propensity for it to drop out is potentially higher because it's transferring more data. We'll see what happens. It also means there's closed captions being also generated, which is fun, isn't it? Yeah. All right. Let's get this show on the road. You ready?
Yep.
Okay, here we go.
Recording in progress.
Welcome to another edition of the Roar of the Lions UK podcast, episode 272. Whoa, living on a prayer. My name is Matthew Turner, alongside Ashley Soden. How you doing, man?
Doing great. Like, as the title says, we've officially reached the halfway point between the Super Bowl and the Sunday openers for the regular season. So Well, halfway there, people. Football is on the horizon, and it smells good.
Can't wait for it to get going. It's been far too long. Let's start with some preamble before we go into the news. We talk about the second part of our schedule reaction series. It means that we're going into each team that we're playing and we're having a look at their draft, their free agency, and their depth chart to evaluate what that team is actually like now, because our perception of what they were last year might just not be accurate at this point. You know, people say, oh, it's a really hard schedule, it's a really easy schedule, not taking into account how they've changed. And so we look to bridge that gap. And then we're talking about OTAs in week 1, the media only available to be there on day 3 of that. So we'll talk about what they've seen and then go into the press conferences following OTA week 1. So let's start by just talking about our Discord channel. It was a really great place to be yesterday, especially with all the motor racing happening. We were talking F1, we were talking Indy 500. It was just a fun place to be. So if you want to be part of a really good community of Lions fans and fans just from across the league, because we aren't just Lions fans in that Discord, then come and join us there. The link to join us is in the chat right now. College Football Podcast, as I mentioned in the pre-show, is coming back, but Ant is doing all of the prep for that at the moment. So that'll be coming back soon, and you'll have the most detailed of breakdowns of the conferences and how they're looking going into the 2024-25 season. That'll be coming soon. Like and sub the podcast if you can. You know how much of a difference it really makes to us if you are on YouTube. It really helps promote us to the rest of the Lions fandom and helps get those views and likes up, which makes all the difference to us. And please don't forget to support Lions Nation Unite as well. They're putting out some great content at the moment on their YouTube channel, on their website and app. Herman Moore's project to bring the best Lions content creators together. We're a Twitch affiliated, YouTube monetized. There's a tip jar in the description. There's a feedback form down there too. We've got a merch store open. You know how to support us, so please don't hold back if you want to show some love. Thanks to everyone on the live chat. Do keep it all coming as we go through the show. Make sure to add the channel if you've got any questions or comments, and we'll be sure to highlight them. All right, news. And first of all, not news, just a statement of fact. It is Memorial Day. And for the UK, actually, the equivalent of Memorial Day is not for another 6 months. So it's a good opportunity for us across the pond to spend a second day honouring those who've given their lives in times of war to protect us. So if you serve, if you have served, if you know someone who served in your family or anything like that, then we are thinking of them and of you. Moving on to some NFL news. Pittsburgh have been selected to host the 2026 NFL Draft. And Ash, I don't know about you, but it feels like this has been quite well received across the league.
Yeah, like, I know the place that's holding it next year isn't seen as good, but Pittsburgh, great city, hopefully will host a fun draft. Will not live up to Detroit, but they will do their damn best. And yeah, I'm looking forward to that. If let's say I win the lottery, I'd love to go back over there and represent the Lions over there, at least in person, scream some abuse when the Bears inevitably pick their next QB when Creighton Williams flames out. So it's going to be good, hopefully.
Yeah, it just seems like it's been universally applauded as a good decision. Everyone I've talked to who's been there for an away game has talked about how nice the city is, how welcoming the fans are. I think certainly all the Steelers fans that I met in Detroit for the draft all seemed like they were fantastic. So looking forward to it as an event, really. I do think Green Bay is going to be interesting as a thing next year, but Pittsburgh, I did say after the Detroit draft, that was fun, but I really loved doing our show as well, and so I'm looking forward to getting back to that next season. But Pittsburgh is an attractive location, so, you know, I'll have to do some thinking on that. Anyway, I did say that we were going to get into the press conferences later, but just briefly, the Lions have confirmed they're going to have joint practices with the Giants preceding preseason game 1, which is against the Giants in New York. But Kansas City rejected this for preseason game 2, with Dan saying it's just not what they do. Ash, it's a bit of a shame, really. We've been used to 2 joint practices when, you know, preceding this regime, sometimes it didn't happen at all. And that's been a kind of breath of fresh air. But only back to once this year, which, might not be a big help for us. I'm sure Dan will take it in his stride.
Yeah, so as I put in the Discord when I put it in there, Big Red is running scared. We whooped their asses week 1 last year. He doesn't want any of that. But unfortunately, he might have to have it in the Super Bowl this year. It's just one of them where Kansas City don't really do joint practices and neither do Pittsburgh. So it's kind of expected maybe that we wouldn't have joint practices with them. But obviously with the Giants, we've got that great relationship. We've done it numerous years, including obviously during the previous regime where we faced them. We saw a little known edge rusher who was down on the Giants depth chart called, I think he was called Romeo Aquara, maybe something like that.
Never heard of him.
When exactly, and when he got waived, we picked him up and he became what he was for us. So yeah, I'm looking forward to joint practice week 1. Means in that preseason game 1, probably won't see a lot of the starters, which means it's hooker time, which is going to be great. Let's finally see what we got in that. Probably doesn't mean much of Sudfeld, but yeah, like it's going to be good to see those practice reports coming in, seeing how Penne and Decker do up against Burns and Thibodeau, what our new secondary looks like against Malik Neighbors, who, if you believe the reports that come out today, the Vikings were wanting to trade up to 5 to draft, but they couldn't get a deal sorted for it, and they wanted to trade Justin Jefferson as part of that. That's the reason why I don't believe it, but if it's true, Jesus Christ. But yeah, it's going to be a good little test for us, and then Kansas week 2. Who knows? Well, we'll get us Brits will get to see our international star hopefully in the flesh and see him get locked up by our secondary.
All right, moving on to the schedule reaction. Without further ado, we left you in the previous episode talking about the week 9 game at Green Bay. God, I'm going to have to try articulating because there's too many words in all the things I'm saying with this. So we move on to week 10 for our first look. And this is going to be a Super Bowl preview at the Houston Texans. It's going to be November the 10th. It's Sunday night football. Starts at 8:20 Eastern time. Houston finished 10-7. They won their division, lost to Baltimore in the divisional round. So a very successful first season for CJ Stroud. They drafted Kamari Lassiter at 42 from Georgia after trading down out of the first with the Minnesota Vikings. Blake Fisher, also in the second, offensive lineman from Notre Dame, one of Ash's favourite prospects in this draft. Kalen Bullock, the safety from USC in round 3. In round 4, Cade Stover, the tight end from Ohio State. In round 6, Jamal Hill, a linebacker, and Jawar Jordan, a running back from Oregon and Louisville, respectively. And then in round 7, they had 3. Solomon Byrd, defensive end from USC. Marcus Harris, one of my favourites, the defensive tackle from Auburn, and Ladarius Henderson, the offensive lineman from Michigan. In terms of their ins and outs in free agency, they were the ones to win the Daniel Hunter sweepstakes. 2 years, $49 million for the edge rusher. They also spent big on linebacker Azeez Al-Shaair from Tennessee, 3 years, $34 million. And from Tennessee as well, the defensive end Danico Autry, 2 years, $20 million. They also signed the punter from Kansas City, Tommy Townsend, 2 years, $6 million. And signed Tim Settle, the defensive tackle from Buffalo, 2 years, $6 million. Foley Fatukasi came over from the Jaguars, 1 year, $5. Jeff Okudah from Atlanta, 1 year, $4.75. Michael Ford from Cleveland, so several former Lions here, the cornerback and core special teamer, 2 years, $4.5. That's all of their biggest moves, and they are all in, which, isn't strange given their cap situation. They were exceptionally healthy. In terms of players that they've lost, defensive end Jerry Hughes, cornerback Steven Nelson. I think actually that might be a bigger loss than people think. Hassan Ridgeway, the defensive tackle. Kareem Jackson, the safety. Scott Quessenberry, the center. Myjai Sanders, the defensive end. Adrian Amos, the safety. We're now into the depths of it, really. Those players are not what they were. Amos isn't what he was. And Sanders, I think he was linked to the Lions for a little bit as someone who had a bit of upside cut in his rookie contract and hasn't really lived up to what he could have been. I don't think he has been signed yet, but there we go. So that's the ins and outs through draft and free agency, and that leaves our team looking like this. CJ Stroud is the starting quarterback. Behind him, Davis Mills, Case Keenum, and Tim Boyle. Ouch for Tim Boyle. Running backs, Joe Mixon, Damian Pierce with a great 1-2 punch if Pierce can get back to form after obviously getting an injury 2 years ago last year, not so hot, but hopefully now fully recovered. Wide receiver, Stephon Diggs after bringing him in via trade, Nico Collins and Tank Dell behind them. Robert Woods, Noah Baum, John Mechie, Ben Skoranek, Xavier Hutchinson. That is absolutely stacked. They also got Jaden Janke, who I assume was a UDFA. So
they got both. They got both Jankies.
Wow.
You see the video of them announcing it. They're like, "We're going to Houston together," and it's a nice little heartwarming moment.
Yeah. So they potentially are. Well, Skoranek, I was kind of hoping would come to the Lions, and he's potentially their wide receiver 7, which is just nuts. Yeah. Tight ends, Dalton Schultz had himself a hell of a year last year. Tegan Tiano, no idea. Brevin Jordan, who I quite liked, and Cade Stover as a draft pick too, so fairly deep at tight end. Fullback, they've got 2 as well, Troy Hairston and Andrew Beck. Then the starting 5 at offensive line, Laramie Tunsil, Kenyon Green, Juice Scruggs, Shaq Mason, and Titus Howard behind them. Got Kendrick Green, Jarrett Patterson, Blake Fisher, Ladarius Henderson. There are some names there for depth as well. And then for defense, in a base 4-3 with Will Anderson and Daniel Hunter as the edge, Foley Fatukasi and Danico Autry inside. They've also got Tim Settle, Mario Edwards, Derek Barnett, Marcus Harris. There's a few names in there that I actually really like. Dylan Horton. 3 linebackers, Christian Harris, Aziz Al-Shaya, and Henry To'o. Not a huge amount behind that at linebacker, but obviously most teams play nickel anyway. Cornerbacks, Derek Stingley and Jeff Okuda with Kamari Lassiter, CJ Henderson, Desmond King behind them, and Mike Ford too. I would imagine that one of those players will come into nickel. And then the safeties, Jimmy Ward, Jalen Petra, Kalen Bullock, Lonnie Johnson. Place kicker, Kamey Fairbairn, one of the best in the league. Punter Tommy Townsend, pretty good, actually. I never thought he was one of the best, but he's a solid punter and holder. And then punt returner Steven Sims, kick returner Damian Pierce, long snapper John Weeks. Ash, what do you think of the Texans' business? What do you think of that overall roster?
Well, I know what you're saying the last bit, because I enjoyed us saying I was looking at it, I'm like, Jesus Christ, I didn't realize that stacked. For a team that you flash back 18 months or so, even about this time last year, they were seen as one of the worst teams in the league. Obviously picking CJ Stroud when they did, and Will Anderson picking that early, everyone's like, they're not going to do that good. Obviously first time head coach with D'Amico Ryans. And then they came and just impressed everyone, hit the ground running. And now they've upgraded their roster even more. So obviously I know we briefly mentioned the Stephon Diggs trade with the depth chart, but obviously bringing in Joe Mixon as well when Cincinnati wanted to get rid of him to be that 1-2 punch with Damian Pierce. It's just a stacked roster. Like, they're starting 22, let's say. So obviously both Levens on offense, defense. They're pretty damn good. Like, the weak links, maybe. So for me, in my head, I've got their offense on slight difference. I've got Howard sliding inside with me. So then you can have Tunsil, Howard, Shrugs, Mason, and then Green, then Mason on right tackle, because that's a bit stronger for me. That's pretty damn strong. Like, to think again, coming into the draft, I was like, Texans' biggest weakness probably corner and offensive line. That's now a strength. Corner, obviously, slight weakness there because it's probably either going to be Okuda or Henderson starting the outside. But for the most part, this is just a stacked roster. The offseason is really damn good. They get a plus as well for obviously keeping their OC Bobby Slovic, who obviously got head coaching interviews like Ben Johnson did. So this is going to be a damn good matchup to watch on offense. Two of the brightest offensive minds in the league just going hammer and tongs at each other. This could be a real shootout, and it's going to be fun to cover when we're sleep deprived at 3:30 in the morning, and we're going to see a JMO end around for a touchdown or something, and then CJ Stroud throws a deep bomb to Stephon Diggs. It's just going to be a boxing match like Usyk Fury a couple of weeks ago. That's the kind of offensive matchup I'm looking at here.
This is the game I'm most worried about all season.
Yeah.
I say that without hyperbole. I know that in this stretch we're going to cover versus Buffalo and at San Francisco, and we've already talked about at Dallas and versus the Rams, but Houston, because they've been able to stack it so high because of CJ Stroud and because they have such confidence in him that he is just the real deal, they've been able to basically go all in. Like, they've accelerated everything. They were at the point that we were 12 months ago, and they've been able to just hit the accelerator. And they've done it in such a way that, does give me pause, because they don't have to be so run first like we are, because frankly, Stroud has more in his locker than Goff does. I'm not saying he's better quarterback. I'm just saying in terms of what he's able to do, I do like CJ Stroud a lot. And, I think that's more of a passing first team, and getting Diggs is just a big get for them. I'm not sure it was a great value trade, but in terms of how they can transform this team because he's on the field, and, Nico Collins played like a top 10 wide receiver last year. Whether he is a top 10 wide receiver, show me again this year and then maybe you get there, but he's certainly right up there, and to be the wide receiver 2 is fantastic. And before Tank Dell went down, he was the best wide receiver in the class in terms of his production. Yep. So it's a fearsome offense. Never mind the fact, if that offensive line can stay healthy, the running backs are going to make hay. And then to have Anderson and Hunter in there, and then Fazukazi played well in Jacksonville for me in a scheme which didn't really suit him. And then Autry as well. Like, I can see them getting after teams on both sides of the ball. My question is, can you hit them in the run against those linebackers? Because I'm a big Petra fan. Absolutely love him. Stingley is one of the best in the game. He really has just proved that, the few seasons after his rookie season in college were a blip, and he's come in, and can he stay healthy again is the big question. So if he can, on paper, I think this is the best team. And Brent has just said chemistry will be the question, but from what I saw last year, they put together a team of misfits and they won their division because the chemistry was on show and they've got the right head coach. Like, I would be all the way in with this staff right now. And unlike the Vikings the previous year where they had 13 wins and you could see they were ripe for a fall, I only see them going up. Like, in a division which kind of flatters to deceive a little bit, it feels like the Texans are primed to deliver.
Yeah. Prime, as you say, they're like us. They're probably gonna they're in a better position, as you said. They're probably gonna win their division again, and it's not gonna be too hard. Like, maybe, as we'll come on to, like the Colts could offer a bit of a challenge if AR comes in right. The team we're going to discuss next, they're also in their division. They can maybe get back to how they were a couple of seasons ago. They might be able to do something. And then Tennessee is just Tennessee. God knows what's going to happen with them. But yeah, the Texans are primed to be, dare I say, like second, third seed in the AFC, potentially.
I don't see any reason why they can't get the top seed. I really don't. Like, I haven't actually looked at what their schedule is, but when you're in that division where, it's difficult, but it's not like the hardest division in football. Let's have a look at the schedule now for the Texans. So they've got at Indy versus the Bears, at Minnesota, versus Jags, versus Bills, at Pats, at Green Bay, versus the Colts again, at the Jets, versus Detroit, at the Cowboys, versus Titans, at Jags, bye in week 14, and then versus Dolphins, at Kansas City, versus Baltimore, at Tennessee. That last stretch is brutal with Miami, Kansas City, and Baltimore in a row. But if they can hit a run, that opening stretch is really important, because if they go in 1-2 after Indy, Chicago, and Minnesota, then they're struggling maybe. But they should be favoured in many of those games, but that is not the easiest schedule I've seen, so maybe I'm overblowing what their record might be a little bit. Okay, let's move on to week 11, game number 10, and it is versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. November the 17th. It's a 1 p.m. kickoff, one of the few Lions kickoffs at 1 p.m. I'm ready for a few late nights this season. It's going to be hell. Jacksonville finished 9-8, second in the division, but unfortunately for them, missed out on a playoff spot on the final day. In terms of their in and outs, in the draft, they took Brian Thomas Jr. from LSU at 23. Round 2, they went back to LSU for the defensive tackle Mason Smith. Lol. Round 3, they took Jarian Jones from Florida State. I'm sure we'll hear about him in just a moment because God knows you can't resist an opportunity to talk FSU. Round 4, they took Javon Foster from Missouri and Jordan Jeffson, defensive tackle from LSU. So Javon Foster, offensive lineman. Round 5, they took DeAndre Prince, a corner from Mississippi, and Keelan Robinson, the running back from Texas. Kicker, Cam Little in round 6 from Arkansas, and round 7, Miles Cole, the outside linebacker from Texas Tech. In terms of their ins and outs in free agency, they took Arik Armstead for a big payday from San Francisco, defensive end, 3 years, $43.5 million. Also brought in Gabe Davis from Buffalo, 3 years, $39 million. Darnell Savage came over from Green Bay, 3 years, $21.75. Mitch Morse from Buffalo as well, 2 years, $10.5. Devin Duvernay, wide receiver from Baltimore, 2 years, $8.5. And Ronald Darby, corner from Baltimore, 2 years, $8.5. Some peripheral guys came in as well. Josiah DeGuara, Joey Sly, Travis Gibson, Terrell Edmonds, Trey Flowers. No, not that one. They've all come in as well. In terms of players that have not been picked up yet from their free agent class, Jamal Agnew is still on the free market, the wide receiver formerly of the Lions. Trey Herndon, corner. Matt Barkley, backup quarterback, no one else to write home about. So this is another team which is invested pretty heavily in this offseason, and that makes their team look like this in the depth chart. Quarterback is Trevor Lawrence, of course. Backup Mac Jones and CJ Beathard behind him. Running backs are Travis Etienne, Tank Bigsby, Dearness Johnson. Wide receivers Christian Kirk, Gabe Davis and Brian Thomas Jr. Behind them Devin Duvernay, Joshua Cephas, which Ant is in the chat. I know, I'm sure he'll cringe at that name now with the being at the Jags. Tight ends Evan Ingram, Luke Farrell, Brenton Strange, and now Josiah DeGuara. Starting offensive line of Cam Robinson, Ezra Cleveland, Mitch Morse, Brandon Sheriff, and Anton Harrison with Walker Little, Luke Fortner, Tyler Shatley, Cole Van Lanen behind them. And then on defense, playing a 3-4 with Arik Armstead, Devon Ham. No, they're changing, are they?
Yeah, so they've brought in the former Falcons DC from last year, Ryan Nielsen, so they're moving to the sort of 4-2-5 base that Falcons used last year.
Right, so let me try and rework this in my head. That means that they're going to be Oh yeah, you go for it.
So it will be Trayvon Walker, Roy Robertson Harris, Arik Armstead, Josh Allen on the defensive line, backed up by Yasir Abdullah, Devon Hamilton, draft pick Mason Smith, Travis Gibson, Jordan Jefferson they picked this year, Jeremiah Ledbetter, who might ring some bells for Lions fans because he used to play for us back in the day. Obviously, had that great game against us last year in preseason. Linebacker, the sort of like their will be Devin Lloyd, and Mike. They will have Luakun, who's led the league in tackles over the past 3 seasons, backed up by Ventrell Miller, Chad Muma, Ty Summers, like a load of good linebackers there, which is key for Nielsen's scheme. At outside corner, they'll have Ronald Darby and Tyson Campbell. At the nickel, it's currently listed on probably as Donald Savage, but I'm saying Jarian's going to do that. And they're backed up by DeAndre Prince, Chris Braswell, Donald Savage, I was just mentioned, Amani Aurora, God help us. And then at safety, you've got Antonio Johnson and Andre Sisco, backed up by Andrew Wingard, who I know Ryan loves, Daniel Thomas, Terrell Edmonds, the former Pittsburgh safety, and then Josh Proctor as well, who they picked up in UDFA from Ohio State, and then obviously special teams, Logan Cook as the punter, Cam Little and former line Riley Patterson at kicker. Cook is the holder, and then their long snapper is Ross Matistic.
Good job with that last one. Yeah, so what do you make of the off-season for them and then the overall team now? Because I have a few thoughts. I'll let you go first.
So I'll actually start with the thing that I brought up with the bringing over of Nilsson as their DC, people who are in our Discord know that Nilsson was my number one candidate. That if we lost Aaron Glenn for one reason or another in this offseason, he was the guy I wanted to bring in. I think he's gonna stabilize that Jack's defense that's been a bit mixed, despite how much they've invested in it. With obviously re-signing Josh Allen to a big contract, drafting Trevor Walker first overall when they did, drafting all those linebackers. They had a lot in it, and it wasn't like it was in former years when it was DC'd by our former defensive line coach Todd Wash. They're trying to get back to that. Nielsen will hopefully, well, hopefully not against us, but against everyone else, we'll be able to make that Jags defense back into what it used to be in the Jacksonville days. But for the most part, they haven't really added much to the team. Like, I like the Brian Thomas pick. They lost, obviously, Calvin Ridley. So Brian Thomas will slot in instantly as probably their wide receiver one. But can you count on a rookie to do that? Maybe. With T-Law, obviously, who's one of the best quarterback prospects of the past 20 years. Obviously, did it all in college. Can he bounce back with Peterson? Maybe. Bringing in Mac Jones as your backup via trade as well. He's good, but I don't know with Mac Jones anymore. And then yet, for the most part, like, some of their big additions other than Thomas in the draft, like Foster's a developmental tackle. I know obviously they like those because obviously they took Anton Harrison last year, who was very in a similar position. But like Mason Smith, former 5-star, great guy on LSU's defensive line until he got injured and got that suspension at the start of last season for the NIL violations. Jaron Jones is going to be their starting nickel. I don't care. He was the best nickel in college last season, according to PFF, and he's a damn good guy. So I won't be surprised by the time we're facing him. Savage has been booted to back up yet again, and he's facing. But for the most part, they haven't really added too much to the team. So it's one step forward, one step back for them, really. Like, yeah, Thomas and Ridley could be a like-for-like replacement, but everywhere else, they haven't really got too much better. Like,
yeah, it feels like a wasted off-season for them, really, for me, because I'm not a fan of Gabe Davis. I think that's just an absolute waste. Darnell Savage is fine, but there's so many available safeties out there for probably less than that who are probably better than him. Safeties, nickels, whatever he is. Mitch Morse, fine, but you overpaid again for a guy that you really didn't have to. Duvernay and Darby are getting a heck of a lot for being what they are at this point. I won't say backups because maybe Darby starts, but, you know, it's still a lot of money. And then draft-wise, I don't even hate it out. Well, Thomas and Jones are great. The rest are all manners of meh. And okay, fine. So you hit on 1 and 3, and 2 is to be decided. That should be fine, but I don't feel like they're moving the needle. Like, Thomas, even if he hits, he is a project. Everyone knew that he needed to have a bit to work on, and I'm not necessarily sure what he does well is what Lawrence does well. So I'm not really seeing the chemistry there perhaps developing like they'd want him to. Jones obviously is going to come into his own, and they really need a nickel corner, so that makes a heck of a lot of sense. But Smith, I mean, people either loved him or hated him. They took a third LSU player in Jordan Jefferson, and, you know, don't be swinging your helmet at players at the Senior Bowl is all I can say. This is a team which flattered to deceive last year, and there's really no reason to think that they're going to change. I do think that change to 4-3 will suit them in terms of who they have personnel-wise. So, you know, does that mean that they're going to get a bit more stout in run defense? Because the reason why Olakun led the league in tackles is because they're getting through the defensive line all the bloody time. So,
exactly.
Does the scheme change mean that they get better in run defense? Because if it does, then maybe that stems the bleeding on defense, allows them to be a bit more competitive. But it's going to be a difficult one for the Jags, and I can see it being a long season for them, especially if, you know, their schedule is just as hard as Houston's is. I know Houston has the first place schedule, Jags have the second, but it's that can't be easy, even in the AFC. All right, moving on to Indianapolis, week 12. So we are going back to back to back in terms of the AFC South. At Indy, November 24th, 1 p.m. They also finished 9-8, but third on tiebreakers, but they also didn't matter. They didn't make it. In terms of who they drafted this year, they took my draft crush Laiatu Latu at 15 from UCLA. Round 2, Adonai Mitchell, the wide receiver from Texas. Round 3, Matt Goncalves, the tackle from Pittsburgh. Round 4, Tanner Bortolini, the center from Wisconsin. Round 5, they had 3 players. Anthony Gould, wide receiver from Oregon State. Jalen Carley's the safety from Missouri. And Jalen Simpson, the safety from Auburn. Round 6, Micah Abraham, the corner from Marshall. And Jonah Laulu, the round 7 guy, defensive lineman from Oklahoma. In terms of their ins and outs in free agency, they managed to retain some of their own guys, with Grover Stewart and Kenny Moore staying with the team in their biggest outlays. In terms of external people, Raekwon Davis, defensive tackle from Miami, 2 years 14, and Joe Flacco came in from Cleveland, 1 year 4.5. Otherwise, no one came in. In terms of players still available on the market, you've got Henry Black, the safety. If you've never heard of him, then there's 2 of us. From players that they've lost, they still don't. Gardner Minshew left for Vegas. Zach Moss left for Cincinnati. Isaiah McKenzie left to go back to the Giants. He was there before, I'm sure. Jake Martin, outside linebacker, went to Chicago. Tony Brown, Cleveland. A bag of nothing really. So not too much in, not too much out. Kind of paid their own guys, drafted these players, and that leaves them with a team that looks like this. Quarterback, Anthony Richardson, Joe Flacco behind him, Sam Ellinger, and also Caden Slovis as a UDFA back there too. Running back of Jonathan Taylor, Trey Sermon. Wide receivers, Michael Pittman, Josh Downs, Adonai Mitchell, Alec Pierce, Anthony Gould. Tight end, Jelani Woods, Mo Alley Cox, Kylan Grants, and Will Mallory. And in the offensive line of Bernard Ryman, Quentin Nelson, Ryan Kelly, Will Fries, and Braden Smith. Matt Goncalves back up, Blake Freeland, Tanner Bortolini. Some names there to back up that team. And then the defense, 4-3, with defensive ends of Kwity Paye and Samson Ebukam, and defensive tackles of DeForest Buckner and Raekwon Davis. They're all backed up by Dayo Odeyingbo, Laiatu Latu, who, will he start? I don't know. Ebukam and Paye are reasonably entrenched players. Isaiah Land is back there. You've got Adatima Adabare also. And then linebackers, you've got EJ Speed, Isaiah Franklin, and Ronnie Harrison. Not a huge amount backing them up. And then cornerbacks of Juju Brents and Kenny Moore II. And safeties of Julian Blackman and Nick Cross backing up the DBs. Not a huge amount there. Jalen Jones, perhaps, but that's about it. And then the kickers, Matt Gay. Punter holder is Rigoberto Sanchez. Kick and punt returners expected to be Anthony Gould with Josh Downs behind him. Long snapper of Luke Rhodes. Ash, what do you make of the Colts off-season?
It's, as you said, they haven't really gained much in free agency. Didn't really lose much either. It's kind of just a net neutral. The draft, pretty damn good, obviously. Latu being the first defensive player off the board for them, fell in right into their lap. And yeah, now they've got bookend defensive tackles for the future with him and Kwity Paye. Drafting Adonai Mitchell, I know the GM came out and was like, oh yeah, fuck everyone that's said about his character concerns. We're all good with him. And it makes a really damn good trio for them with him, Pittman, and Downs. That's a good trio for AR to throw to. And then obviously Gould with special teamer, but he'll be a good slot player for them. Alec Pierce, former guy a couple of years ago out of Cincinnati, who had big expectations, hasn't really hit those yet. So tight end room's good. I wasn't a big Jelani Woods fan, but he seems okay for them. Offensive line isn't what it used to be for them, but that right guard position needs showing up. Will Fries is not good enough to start in this league. Won't be surprised by the time we play him that Tanner Bortolini's there. So that'll be interesting to see. Obviously, I was a massive Matt Goncalves fan in this draft. Him backing up Bernard Ryman's going to be it's a pretty good move for them. And then on that defense, again, great defensive line, at least starters, some backups, especially edge room. And I can see they're kind of going for that Dallas linebacker room in a way because you've got Ronnie Harrison and Jalen Carlos, you mentioned, listed, at least for me there. Those are former safeties. They're going for that sort of box safety hybrid guy there, like Dallas did last year against us. So they could be hitting the run maybe. Corner room isn't the best. Like, it's a lot of mid, even it starts like Juju Brent is okay, I guess. But Kenny Moore's a good slot. But how much can you do? I like their safety room though. They're starting like their top three at safety is pretty good with Blackman, Nick Cross, who obviously went a couple of picks before Kirby, blew up the combine, and then Daniel Scott, who was guy last year. Everyone's looking at as a special teamer again, the athletic guy. That's a good trio to have at safety, but even behind them, you don't have much. Like, it's a lot of mid again, and it will rest on whether AR can come back and hit the ground running. Oh, you've got one as well now.
Yeah, sorry, just showing off my old style Lions pin badge for everyone in the YouTube and Twitch. Sorry.
I mean, I've got one there as well on my Red Wings thing. But yeah, it's just their season will ride and die on Anthony Richardson again. And I know he started off really well, and me and you both really liked him last year's draft. But I've seen firsthand at Florida that if you don't put enough around him, he won't be able to carry the team. And I'm scared that that's what's going to happen here, and he's going to flame out and burn. I know I said they've got a good trio for him to throw to, but behind that, not much. And if that defense can't stop people, which it might not in the past game with having a really bad cornerback room, he might be able to keep pace, but the team around him might start to fall apart. Like Jonathan Taylor, good running back, but ever since Scotty Montgomery kind of left, hasn't really been that. And I know Tyler Goodson's okay. Trey Sermon, Jesus, what a flame out for the San Francisco when they picked him. And then Evan Hall, who people might remember from last year, again, good running back. But there's no other than AR, there's no one really like standing out to me on either side of the ball. Like Quitty Pay is a good edge rusher, don't get me wrong, but like he's not really a star. They don't really have a star on their roster you can point to and say, that's the guy when they need something, that's the guy they can go to. So they might be better than last year because they'll have their starting quarterback back. But I'm not going to say they're going to turn around and become the next Texans or anything where they win a division easily because they're putting up points in everyone. They're just going to be mid 500 at best.
I absolutely love their off-season. I just think they nailed their first 6 picks. I mean, Latu, Mitchell, Goncalves, Bortolini, Gould, and Carly. It's like that is at every single point just taking the top guy you have in your board and screw wherever he ends up. And actually, I think it works out pretty well. Now, Bortolini, I'm not sure whether he can back up at guard. I think he's a centre only. I really do at the NFL. But even then, can Freeland kick inside? Can Goncalves kick inside? Is Josh Sills good enough? The offensive line is the question, isn't it? Because I think there's enough weapons there. I mean, between Pittman, Downs, Mitchell, Gould, and Pierce, you've got 5 pretty solid wide receivers out the gate. And Taylor is still one of the best running backs in this league for me. So can Richardson stay healthy? Can that offensive line protect him? You know, is that right side of the line a bit of a liability? And then can they hold up in the pass game? Absolutely, like you said. I was a big Juju Brents guy. Felt very vindicated when he went round 2 season before last. Safeties, like you say, are really good. So it's that cornerback room and can the linebackers cover? So you're looking at, Amon-Ra St. Brown and people like that to really try and stick it to him. You're right about that defensive line because in some ways it's absolutely stacked. And then when you actually are relying on someone to go and make a play, who is it? It might be Latu. It might be DeForest Buckner, but it's a tough ask at defensive tackle to go and do that to someone. Even Aaron Donald, as good as he was, sometimes from the interior couldn't be quick enough to get to a place. So, those players often come from the edge just because of the nature of the position. Ebukam and Pei are good and yet not great, and Latu might be the guy that they turn to. Let's see. All right. Our next game is versus Chicago. That's the Thanksgiving game, November 28th. 12:30 kickoff. The Bears obviously finished 7-10 and were 4th in the division. We did not cover them already, so I don't know why I have skipped offloading all of their information. It's just me being a fool. So I'm not going to cover a team twice. So we're not going to talk about Green Bay. We're not going to talk about Minnesota for a second time because we've done that already in the first episode. So we'll just briefly talk about if there's any differences to those games or any wrinkles. But otherwise, we're just going to skip them. But Chicago, we haven't talked about yet. So 7-10, 4th in the division. Of course, they do take the number 1 overall pick because of the trades that they made. They only have 5 picks, though. And they only have 4 until trading back into the draft in round 5. So Caleb Williams, number 1 overall, quarterback from USC. Rome Odunze, 9, the wide receiver from Washington. The tackle Kieran Amedeniji from Yale. Round 4, they took a punter, the British guy giving it large, only to announce a pointless position player at the top of day 3. From Iowa, and Austin Booker, they traded back into the draft altogether to draft him, the edge player from Kansas. In terms of their offseason, they didn't spend big, but they spent on quite a few guys. So DeAndre Swift comes in via Philadelphia from the Lions, 3 years, $24 million. Kevin Byard, the safety from Philadelphia as well. After his trade, he then ends up not being re-signed, 2 years, $15 million. Gerald Everett, who was not too bad, actually, in his 2 stops in LA, now come over to Midwest, 2 years, $12 million. Jonathan Owens from Green Bay, we both know that he's not anything to shake a stick at, 2 years, $4.75 million. And Coleman Shelton, 1 year, 3. He's a guard, apparently. Never heard of him.
He's a center. He's the former starter for LA Rams last year at center.
Why do over the camp not go over the camp? Why does Spot Track do this to me and list them at a position that they didn't play in last season? That's just malpractice. In terms of players available who were on the Bears last season, Eddie Jackson and Yannick Ngakoue really do lead the list there. But also in terms of losses, I'm having to do this on a full list because they don't actually show their losses on a team-specific one, which is very annoying. So Chicago have lost Darnell Mooney to Atlanta, Justin Jones to Arizona, Cody Whitehair to Vegas, Dan Feeney to Minnesota, should say. Lucas Patrick and Nathan Peterman to the Saints, respectively. Donta Foreman to Cleveland. Equinemius St. Brown to the Saints. Trent Taylor to San Francisco. Robert Tonyan to Minnesota. That's your lot for who they've lost. So, their depth chart looks like this. Caleb Williams, backed up by Tyson Bagent and Brett Ripien. Running backs, DeAndre Swift, Roschon Johnson, Khalil Herbert, and Travis Homer, and a 4-headed monster. Wide receivers of DJ Moore, Keenan Allen, Rome Odunze, Tyler Scott, Velus Jones Jr., Dante Pettis. Tight ends of Cole Kmet, Gerald Everett. Fullback of Kari Blazingame. And then starting offensive line of Braxton Jones, Tevin Jenkins, Coleman Shelton, Nate Davis, and Darnell Wright, backed up by Kieran Amedeniji, Chatai Carter, Ryan Bates, Doug Kramer. Defense, baseball 3, with the 4 being DeMarcus Walker, Andrew Billings, Gervin Dexter, and Montez Sweat, backed up by Zach Pickens, Austin Booker, Dominic Robinson, Keith Randolph. Linebackers of TJ Edwards, Tremaine Edmonds, and Jack Sanborn, backed up by Noah Sewell, Micah Baskerville. Cornerbacks of Jalen Johnson and Tyreek Stevenson, backed up by Kyler Gordon, Terrell Smith, Jalen Jones. Safeties Jaquan Brisker and Kevin Byard, backed up by Jonathan Owens, Adrian Colbert, Elijah Hicks. And then kicker Cairo Santos, punter, holder, Torrey Taylor. Man, he better be good. Punt kick returner Velus Jones Jr. Long snapper is Patrick Scales. What do you make of the Bears draft, free agency, and the team now? In fact, before you start, because I didn't get there last time, thank you to Joshua Mercer subscribing at Tier 1 on Twitch for his 10th month. Says, coming up on a year. Can't wait, Josh. Looking forward to it. We'll have a shot in your honour for 12 months when we get there. Right, Ash. Sorry. Bears.
It's all right. Excuse me. The top 3 picks are good. Like, really good for them. Obviously, Caleb Williams, number 1 overall. Supposed to be the next coming of quarterback god. So Bears better hope so, because we're just going to keep pulling out the stats on them. You've never had a quarterback throw for more than 4,000 yards or 30 touchdowns in a season. Let's see if Caleb can break that for you. Odunze breaks my heart. He goes there. Flashing back 18 months ago, looking at last year's draft, and me and Rye, you all saying that's a guy we could target to start per day 3 to be our future X receiver. Seeing him go to a rival team will really hurt. And then Kieran Mdenje, there's their future left tackle. I know they've got Braxton Jones there, who is all right, but he's someone that you're always looking to upgrade on. They've got their potential to upgrade there. Austin Booker, he's one of those, for me, got production over athleticism. I know he tested really poorly, and that's why he fell in the draft, but he's got production there, and that's what they kind of need. I know they've got Montez Sweat and DeMarcus Walker, who obviously I know a lot about, being a former Knoll. Booker could be productive for him, which is what they need, because they didn't really have that anyone opposite Sweat last year. I know they had a Yannick Ngakoue, but he didn't really do much. And yeah, they've made some additions like Swift, fair, like, but is he as good as like Dave Montgomery, for instance, who they obviously let go a couple of years ago? Is he as good as Roshan Johnson these days? I don't know. For me, Roshan Johnson should be the starter, who they picked obviously last year. He should be the starter. Obviously, they bring the low signed Coleman Shelton, trying to shore that up. Obviously, after losing Whitehair, it's all right. Like, at least they're trying to fix our issues now, rather than just doing whatever. But for me, the big additions in the offseason were the changes at coordinator. So bringing in Shane Waldron, the former Seattle OC, we saw I know he was there for sort of the last years of Russ and then the first year of Gino, but he can be a competent offensive coordinator. Eric Washington, someone I know a lot about, he actually used to play for the Lions, if I remember rightly, but he used to be the defensive line coach for Buffalo. So be bringing in that sort of similar scheme to what we have, because Buffalo run the same sort of 4-3 scheme that we do. So we might be able to block quite well against it, hopefully. But having them two, that's a good addition, because Flus and Poles, they're in the hot seat. If they don't get to 500 this season, if they don't make some noise, they're both gone, and they're starting yet again. And it could get to that point. I know the Bears, because they're one of those old-fashioned organizations, they won't fire them mid-season, but it could get to the point where we get into this game and their writing's on the wall, and they're doing whatever they can to stay relevant. They might have, because the trade deadline's obviously gone by that, they might have made another big trade. I know obviously they traded for Keenan Allen this offseason, which me and you had split opinions of, but looking at it now, with obviously them getting a Dunze in, that's probably going to work a lot better than what I said a couple of months ago. They're swinging it for the fences already in some ways, and it'll be interesting to see if it hits, because if it does, they could have a really good team, like, not as good as certain fans of their team think, with a top 3 in the top 3 in the NFL, I believe. Some of them are saying they're the top 10 defense, and that they could have a decent defense with Dexter and Pickens hopefully making strides in their second year. Same with Tyler Stevenson, who I absolutely loved last year. But they're not. They could be relevant. They could be the second best team in the division, but it really does ride and die on whether they could just get things to work, which I don't believe in the Bears. I really don't believe in the Bears. So it could, in the words of, I know it's not the right team to say it with, but in the words of Taylor Swift, it could be forever, or it could go down in flames. And right now, I'm siding with going down in flames.
Yeah, it's funny, isn't it? I mean, I didn't even specify the trade for Keenan Allen for, I think it was a 4th round pick, but it is a big move. And if you have a look at their team in isolation of who they are, barring defensive end and defensive tackles, and defensive end specifically excluding Montez Sweat, who obviously had a great year, it's a pretty damn good team.
Yeah.
Offensive line, they are trying to fix it. Have they done enough? Remains to be seen. But I believe in that right-hand side of the line. Nate Davis, Darnell Wright.
Yeah.
You know, Nate Davis is going to have a bit of a rebound. He didn't have a great year last year. Or, I mean, did he play at all? I know that he has some personal issues or something like that, but
yeah,
he's a damn good right guard when he wants to be. And Tevin Jenkins at left guard, you know, that's at least 3 positions I feel pretty good about for the Bears. So can they run behind that line? I, like you, would be having Roschon Johnson as my starter, at least for the first, 2 downs, and then maybe have Swift as a 3rd down guy. But I really like Khalil Herbert as well. So Swift just feels like a waste, and that's kind of what I feel like when I have a look at their off-season, is I think it was a bit of a waste. Like,
yeah,
you can't go wrong picking the best quarterback at 1. You just can't. Odunze is a great pick. Amedeniji is a great pick. Where's the rest of their picks? Okay, fine. So you took Keenan Allen. That's better than anyone you could have drafted, fine. But it's a flash in the pan for a rookie quarterback, because how long does he have left? So you're really going for it this year if you're making that sort of move. You're like, we're competing this year, and it's a lot to put on someone's plate. Swift is a waste. Byard is a stopgap. He didn't play great last year at Philadelphia. He was fine, but he's not the player he used to be. Everett is a mid-tight end getting paid upper tight end money. It's a season where they could have really pushed in a little bit in free agency, but decided kind of to hold off in favor of trades for expensive players, and it really kind of limits where this team can go long term, I think. So
yeah,
they better be successful, but I just don't think that they're going to be able to hang with some teams. Edwards and Edmonds have proven to be overpaid massively at linebacker, whereas Jack Sanborn has been one of their best pickups in recent years as a UDFA. He's been absolutely fantastic. So funny how those things go. It's a team that I think they maybe have the widest range of outcomes of any team in the NFC North, because if you told me they were going to win 4 games because Williams just took a little while to bed in, and the chemistry wasn't quite there, and then it just got kind of nasty, and you could see that the coach had kind of jacked it in because he knew he was going to get fired anyway, and you wouldn't be surprised. And if you told me that they won 12 games, I can see it. Like, if the chemistry just fits, if in game 1 Caleb Williams comes out firing and sort of the winning just breeds some momentum, I can kind of see it. So, widest range of outcomes of all of the NFC North teams. Hate what they did in free agency, but don't mind their draft, don't mind their trades. They certainly have given Williams enough weapons. So,
yeah,
let's see what happens. It's going to be interesting. But, like you say, I took who the Bears are out the equation. If you put them in the equation, this front office has given us no cause for concern, really. And they outplayed the Lions twice last year, make no mistake about it. They beat us once and should have beaten us twice. But they're still not good enough.
Yeah.
Just because you beat us twice, okay, fine, you had our number. But what about the rest of your season? You were competitive with Fields, but you weren't winning the games. Being competitive is fine, but win the damn games. And they just didn't do that. So I think we'll be looking forward to a new regime again with a quarterback that they didn't draft. Let's see what happens with that. Let's move it on. And Green Bay is the next game. Week 14, December the 5th. 8:15 kickoff. Thursday night football, so back-to-back Thursday games. Any thoughts on this since we've already previewed Green Bay?
Not really, no. It's nice. At least, like, it would have been nice to get a bit more rest, but back-to-back Thursday night games, Thursday games, I can't really moan too much. Just, it's one of them. Our schedule has been very weird. We have some places where we could have used a bit more rest, but we just don't. We make do what it is. They're coming to our place this time. Let's just do our business, because at this point, hopefully, we'll know if the Jordan Love experiment is truly correct or not. And for us, it'd probably be, the injuries starting to rack up. But for us being so far from our bye now, it'd be one of them. It's good. Yeah, like it's a net neutral from the last one pretty much. We've won in Lambeau before at our own ground. Let's just stomp them out of contention, I think.
I mean, what's really weird about this game is that both teams play on Thanksgiving, which means both teams have a week to prepare for a Thursday game.
Yeah.
It's so bizarre. I've not seen that before, I don't think. So weird. But it's going to be an interesting game. And I mean, that could decide the North. I mean, it could be a clinching scenario for the Lions. If Green Bay, start where they left off last season, then they could be flying too. So let's see what happens. Anyway, next up is week 15, which is versus Buffalo. It's December the 15th. It's a 4:25 kickoff, so the later window on a Sunday. Bills finished 11-6. They eventually did end up winning the AFC East after looking like they were going to come second fiddle. They lost to Kansas City in the divisional round. In their draft, they took Keon Coleman in round 2 after trading back twice. They also took Cole Bishop, the safety from Utah. Round 3, Dwayne Carter, defensive tackle from Duke. Round 4, Ray Davis, the running back from Kentucky. Round 5, they had 3 picks. Cedric Van Pran, the center from Georgia. Edifan Olafosio, the linebacker from Washington. And Javon Solomon, the defensive end from Troy. Round 6, Tylen Grable, the tackle from UCF. And Daquan Harsey, the corner from Penn State. And then Travis Clayton at round 7, the tackle from England. Thought we'd make an appearance at some point. In terms of their free agency acquisitions, they've brought in Curtis Samuel, the wide receiver from Washington, 3 years, $24 million. Mitchell Trubisky, quarterback from Pittsburgh, 2 years, $5.25. Austin Johnson, defensive tackle from the Chargers, 1 year, $3.5. In terms of players still available that have left them, Gabe Davis, of course, left. Leonard Floyd went to San Francisco. Mitch Morse went to Jacksonville, as I mentioned earlier. We also have Dane Jackson going to Carolina, the cornerback. Defensive tackle Tim Settle mentioned earlier. Tyrell Dotson, the linebacker, to Seattle. Tre'Davious White went to the Rams, their former All-Pro corner. Jordan Poyer, the former, I'm sure he was an All-Pro at some point, safety from Miami to Miami. Naeem Hines went to Cleveland, the running back. Siran Neal, the safety, went to Miami. Trent Sherfield, the wide receiver, went to Minnesota. Jordan Phillips, defensive end, to the Giants. Poona Ford, defensive end, went to the Chargers. Deontay Hardy went to Baltimore. Kyle Allen went to Pittsburgh. So they've lost a fair amount. None of those guys massively high profile, apart from maybe the first 2 getting more than $10 million a year or more. But substantial amount of players. And it leaves their their depth chart looking like this. Josh Allen, quarterback, with Mitchell Trubisky behind him. Running backs of James Cook, Ray Davis, and former Lion Ty Johnson. Wide receivers Khalil Shakir, Keon Coleman, and Curtis Samuel, with Marquez Valdez-Scantling, who they recently signed, who wasn't on the list. Why wasn't he on the list? Thanks, Spot Track. Matt Collins is there too. Chase Claypool, Andy Isabella. Wow, they're throwing a lot of shit at the wall, aren't they? Seeing what sticks. Tight end Dalton Kincaid, Dawson Knox, Trey McKitty, fullback Reggie Gilliam, offensive line of Dion Dawkins, David Edwards, Connor McGovern, Osiris Torrance, and Spencer Brown. Behind them, they have Cedric Van Pran, Lyle Collins, Ryan Van Der Mark. Surely Lyle Collins is not going to be a backup. I don't believe that. ESPN, thank you. Base 4-3 defense, the 4 being Greg Rousseau, Daquan Jones, Ed Oliver, and Von Miller. Behind them, AJ Epineza, Austin Johnson, Dwayne Smoot, Javon Solomon, Austin Johnson, did I mention already? Dwayne Carter, sorry, is the one I didn't mention. Linebackers, Matt Milano, Terrell Bernard, and Nicholas Morrow. Behind them, Dion Jones, Edifan Alafosio. Cornerbacks, Rasul Douglas, who they got via trade last year from the Packers, and Christian Benford, Kai Elam, and Taron Johnson behind them. Also the draft pick Daquan Hardy. Safeties, Taylor Rapp and Mike Edwards, with Cole Bishop behind them, and Damar Hamlin, of course. Kickers, Tyler Bass. Punter holder is Sam Martin, former Lion. Kicker punt returner is Khalil Shakir, and the long snapper is Reed Ferguson. Ash, what do you make of their off-season?
They smashed the wide receiver pick, and as I predicted. And that's one of the things I've loved kind of seeing on Twitter is Bills fans falling in love with Keon. Like, they can see, like, you can see why I absolutely love this guy, the personality. The fact he's put himself on Madden and he's doing a wide receiver career mode with the Bills as himself. I just love the guy. And like, what a birthday present the NFL has given me by letting me see one of my favorite college players yet again, albeit in the wrong blue colors. So yeah, that's going to be a fun stream for you. Me being absolutely rot-arsed on my birthday watching us play the Bills. Like, they had a good draft. I liked Keon. Obviously, I love Keon. Dwayne Carter I liked as well. Defensive tackle. He's I think our lad has listed as a DT. He'd probably play more nose tackle, backing up Jocon Jones. Cole Bishop's a really good safety out of Utah. And obviously with them losing their guys, he'll probably be their start at free safety before long. Like Tyler Grable, obviously we know Ant loved at tackle. He's one for the future for them because Deion Dawkins is getting up there, and same as so he could eventually be their left tackle of the future. Obviously, Ray Davis, damn good running back out of Kentucky, and that's one thing that the Bills have kind of failed to do with Josh Allen for the most part. Is established to run despite throwing a lot of darts at that position with Devin Singletary, James Cook. I've obviously signed Frank Gore Jr. as well at the UDFA at running back. So they're really trying to get that run game established to help Allen because Allen has MVP potential, and getting him a run game will help. Obviously, the team losing a couple of his favorite pieces with Diggs and Davis going is going to be hard to replace, but Keon will take that Diggs role. Can Samuel replace Gabe Davis? Maybe, but he's more of like your sort of gadgety slot guy. So then you're more relying on Marvez Valdes-Scantling to do that. Claypool backing up Keon. Hopefully, for Bill's sake, they never have to see him play. Campbell and Andy Isabella, again, speedy guys. They're trying to really find their Gabe Davis replacement. But do they need to? Because I think it was more Allen making Davis look good than Davis being a great guy. So one of them will probably hit. Remains to see who that is. And then I know obviously there are some pieces on that defense, but it's still a really damn good coached defense. I know that McDermott perhaps isn't the most highly regarded head coach ever because they've had all this talent, but they never really got to the promised land. But he knows how to coach his defenses. So even though they lost, last year to injury in London, they still managed to. They had a bit of a blip, but then they rebounded. It's going to be a damn good game to watch. And the good thing for us is when we played them 2 years ago on Thanksgiving, we were a ascending team, and we came literally one play away from beating them. If DJ Chark turned around and caught that ball, we would have beat the Bills on Thanksgiving. And now they're coming to us again. And they've got worse in a way since then. And we've got better. So this could be one of those matchups where I know obviously we've got the outside looking in already and saying good things about this. This could be a statement game where we say, actually, you know what? We are a really good team. The Bills, who everyone loves, we've just beat them. We beat the Chiefs last year. We are powering the NFL now. This could be a real statement game for us going into that last stretch where we might be fighting for that number one seed, and we need to start to keep racking up the wins. And honestly, again, it might be like when I said the Texans game, it might be an offensive shootout for the most part. But I have faith we could keep score and eventually win it.
A really interesting team. I like their draft, but it doesn't move me. Grable, as you mentioned, Daquan Hardy was one of my guys. I think he had a fantastic combine, especially. I thought he was really impressive. Van Pran's going to be a big guy, but he's kind of one for the future for them because they have an incumbent. Ray Davis isn't going to play a huge amount of snaps, I don't think. We'll see, but, James Cook had a really good season last year. Cole Bishop going to come in and start straight away, maybe? I don't know, but there's a lot to throw at a safety, and Coleman, fantastic, but we talked through the process about how much he has to learn. So this feels like a Bills team that has taken a bit of a step back. Now, coaching could be the thing which brings them up again, and he certainly has some weapons, but after the trade away of Yeah, Diggs, thank you. They don't have a bona fide wide receiver 1, and Coleman ideally wouldn't be that guy year 1. So can Kincaid stand up? Can Samuel be that guy? I mean, Allen has converted himself into a drop back passer who can run when required. But the way this team is built requires him to run a lot more than he did last year. And the reason he's tried to stop doing that is to prolong his career. Is he really going to adjust the way he plays to fit the potential lack of weapons on offense? I see this team playing a lot of 12 personnel this year because Knox and Kincaid, you've got to get them on the field together. And then maybe that solves a bit of the problem. You can run the ball a bit more, and then you only have to play 2 of Shakir, Coleman, and Samuel as wide receivers. Maybe that solves the problem a lot, actually. I wouldn't be surprised to see him in 12, and maybe even 22. A lot. Get Davis and Cook on the field with Kincaid and Knox, and then just have Coleman or Samuel out there. I wouldn't have Shakir as on his own. On defense, obviously, they're pretty damn solid. I mean, safeties, they've lost a lot. Maybe that DB room actually can be got at because Douglas is fine, but he's not changing the world. Benford, whatever. Rapp and Edwards, I don't know. Bishop, sure. But then up front, they're very, very powerful. And at linebacker, we know how troublesome they can be. So this is an interesting team that is in transition while attempting to be competitive. And I think the team will be competitive. I think they could still win the AFC East comfortably. Them versus Miami is going to be more of a fight. I would probably give the edge to Miami at this point at the moment, looking at their teams, but it's still going to be a hard-fought battle. So let's see what happens. Don't hate their off-season with where they were at as a team. I think with where they were in cap, everyone, when they talk about grades for an off-season, they just look at what you had and what you have now, and we're kind of doing that a little bit, but when you're looking at the constraints of a team, what you can and can't do because of maybe even prior decisions that you made, but in isolation, this is what you have and this is where you are. I think they're the team which has done the most with the least, maybe, in terms of they've managed to kind of keep themselves vaguely competitive while losing quite a lot. So, impressive in their, I don't know, mediocrity as a contender. I don't really know how else to put that. They're definitely contenders, but they're kind of a mid-contender. They're not up there.
They've stayed the course, basically. Like, they're always one of those that you have good odds for the AFC Championship, but you never get good odds for the Super Bowl.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree with that. All right. Next up is the Chicago Bears, Week 16, December 22nd, 1 p.m. kickoff for them. We talked about Chicago just 3 games ago, so Week 16, I mean, it kind of feels like the first game just 3 weeks before that is kind of crucial to this one, to be honest.
Yeah, like the big difference here is obviously we're going to their backyard this time, so prepare for all your golf can't play outdoors in cold weather stats, Bears fans, because you're going to need them for the copium. It's one of them. We'll probably have it wrapped. Hopefully, we'll have the division wrapped up by then. We can kind of not take it slow because we never should, we never will, and we never should just put it in cruise control. But it should be one of them where we roll into town, hopefully with a good head of steam behind us just before Christmas, and we're like we did last year around Christmas time with obviously the game against Minnesota, just establish ourselves our division win with this hopefully, and just keep on, because the Bears shouldn't worry us this year. They might do if Williams hits the ground, as we said before. They might do, but at this point, just they'll probably phone it in, as we said. Should be I don't want to say an easy win, but right now you predict a win.
All right, final game we're going to profile, because Week 18 is Minnesota, and we've already talked about them, is Week 17, which is at San Francisco. So having gone outdoors to the Bears, you're going outdoors to the 49ers on December 30. So, you know, it's going to be damn cold in San Francisco. 8:15 kickoff, so it's Monday Night Football. Is it Monday, though, because it's December 30? It may not be Monday. It might be just a Monday Night Football production.
Yes, Monday night, yeah.
It is Monday night. Oh, wow. There
And
we
it's
go.
the last one of the season. The NFL knows how to do their scheduling.
There we go. So the potential top 2 seeds in the NFC go at it maybe for the number 1 seed because, of course, the tiebreaker will be had in this game. San Francisco last year lost to the Kansas City in the Super Bowl, obviously beat the Lions in the conference championship. They drafted Ricky Pearsall in the first round, wide receiver Florida. Went back to the state of Florida to grab Ronaldo Green in round 2, the DB from Florida State. Round 3, they took Dominic Poole, the versatile offensive lineman from Kansas. In round 4, they've got 3 guys: Malik Mustafa, DB from Wake Forest, Isaac Guerrero, the running back from Louisville, and the wide receiver Jacob Cowing from Arizona. Round 6 saw Jack Kingston go there, offensive lineman from USC. And round 7, Tatum Bethune, the linebacker from Florida State. So 2 Florida State guys. You can see the smile on Ash's face. Lord help us. Free agency, they brought in Leonard Floyd from the Bills, 2 years 20. Ito Gross-Matos from the Panthers, 2 years 18. Jordan Elliott from the Cleveland Browns, defensive tackle, 2 years 7. No one else really of note. Josh Dobbs from the Vikings, Isaac Yiadom from the Saints, Rock Ya-Sin from Baltimore, 1 year 1.3, very cheap deal for him. In terms of players they have let go, let me just scroll all the way down here to San Francisco, where they have lost this season Eric Armstead to Jacksonville, Chase Young to the Saints, Charlie Werner to the Falcons, Sam Darnold to Minnesota, Javon Kinlaw to the Jets, Ray McLeod to the Falcons, Sebastian Joseph Day to the Titans, Cleveland Farrell to the Commanders, Randy Gregory to the Buccaneers, Isaiah Oliver to the Jets. That's all to write home about, I think, for the San Francisco 49ers. So that leaves their team looking like this. Quarterbacks are Brock Purdy, starter. Behind him, Josh Dobbs, Brandon Allen, and Tanner Mordecai. Jesus Christ. Running back, Christian McCaffrey, Elijah Mitchell, Isaac Guerrero. Wide receivers, Deebo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk, Jawan Jennings, Ricky Pearsall, Jacob Cowing. Chris Conley's also there, somehow still in the league. Tight end, George Kittle, Cameron Latu. Fullback, Kyle Juszczyk. And then the offensive line of Trent Williams, Aaron Banks, Jake Brendel, John Feliciano, and Colton McKivitz, backed up by Spencer Burford, Chris Hubbard, Dominic Pooney, Drake Nugent. And then on defense, it's a 4-3. In the 4 are Leonard Floyd, Malik Collins, Javon Hargrave, and Nick Bosa, backed up by Drake Jackson, Ito Gross-Matos. That's about it. Linebackers, Dre Greenlaw, Fred Warner, Devondre Campbell. I think Campbell might find himself a backup there because, of course, they will be playing nickel most of the time. Corners are Travarius Ward, Diomedor Lenore, and Ronaldo Green, with Isaac Yiadom, Rock Ya-Sin. Chase Lucas is also there, Ambry Thomas, and then the safeties, Talona Fuanga and Jair Brown. Malik Mustafa is there. There is a wide belief that Jair Brown's actually going to go to the bench and Malik Mustafa is going to start there, I believe. We shall see. Former Michigan man Jake Moody is the kicker. Punter holder is Mitch Wishnowski. Kicker, punt returner is Ronnie Bell. And the long snapper, Tabor Pepper. Ash, what do you make of the San Francisco offseason?
They lost a lot, as you listed. Like, obviously, they traded for Chase Young, lost him, but they've done decent to replace them. Like Leonard Floyd will basically just play that Chase Young role. Ito Gross-Matos, I know he kind of flamed out as a former second-round pick from Penn State for Carolina, but there's that Eric Armstead replacement in a way, like a guy who can slide inside on passing downs, but also can play base end in rush down, running down to mean. Decent pickup for them. Like, so they've kind of kept their defensive line, which is always their strength, reloaded. Linebacker room, best in the league, easily. Devondre Campbell, Fred Warner, Drake Greenlaw, what a trio. And then obviously bringing in Buffoon, who I know a lot about. He he will probably be a special team to start anyway, but he's a rundown guy. He isn't the best in coverage, so expect to see him on first and second down against Demo and Gibbs. The secondary moves they've made. Mustafa, I'm going to start with him because I really loved him. I know he's currently listed as a strong safety, as you said. They're probably going to bench Joe Brown for him, so Hafanga's going to go to free safety, and Mustafa's just going to be a tackling machine at strong safety. You watch some of his cut-ups of tackling and that. There's a reason why he was one of my guys I was hoping for. If we can maybe get him, that's great, because obviously our safety room is a bit bare. He would have been great for us, but 49ers get richer. But the big moves, obviously bringing in Ronaldo Green and Rocky Sin, means they're probably doing what we're doing. They're going to a lot more man coverage because Ronaldo Green is, well, don't just take my word for it. Listen to Eric Schlitt. He was one of the best man coverage corners in this draft. Obviously, San Francisco for years have been a Seattle free team. Look at all that. We've obviously some of their former DCs all seem to run it because that's the branch they come from. But it seems they're now moving to more man coverage, coming where the league is. So it's going to be interesting to see how some of their existing pieces transition to that. And an offense have kind of stayed the same. Like offensive line is pretty much the same guys. I know they brought in John Feliciano, but Course McKibbs is obviously going to be a weak link on their offensive line as he was last year. Hopefully, but it might be by then that Pooney is starting over him. They've also got Ben Barch, who I know our lad's got listed at centre, but he's one of those versatile guys that can play across the line. Spencer Burford can do that as well. So they've got a few guys that can maybe come in there. Wicked Pearsall, just ask Rye how good he is. He's going to be a good fit in that system. So is Jacob Cowing. I know he's tiny. He's like 5'8", 160, smaller than me, but if anywhere is going to get the best out of him, it's going to be San Francisco and Kyle Shanahan. Speed on that offense. Interesting to see that they've managed to keep both Debo and Ayuk. Will that be the case by the time we play them? Because obviously trades deadline's gone. Remains to be seen because I can see them maybe shifting one of them if they get offered enough. And then backfield is the same. I loved Isaac Pareto as well in this draft. He's such a 49er with his speed. And then they've brought in Cody Schrader as well from Missouri, who's also a fast guy. So it's a lot of, excuse me. They've lost a lot, but they've done enough, in my opinion, to maybe replace most of that production. And if some of those rookies can hit like Pierce or like Cowing, like Pooney, they might have actually got some upgrades as well.
Yeah, it's just a worrying team, isn't it? When I have a look at their draft, a lot of people pan the Pearsall pick as too high. I absolutely love him. I think he'll start for them. They'll play 11 personnel. A lot of the time, obviously, they play some 12 because of use check. 21, sorry, I should say. Their offensive line is their biggest question mark, right? Because everything else is basically pretty damn good. You maybe can get at them a little bit in the run if they have Javon Hargrave, who I think had a down year last year, Malik Collins, Leonard Floyd, I don't think are the best run stuffers in the world. So can you run on this team is going to be the question, because if you can control the ball against them, take the ball out of Kyle Shanahan's pocket, then you know that you're not getting hit up by these things meant to stretch you as defense. Because the thing about San Francisco is that by minute 58 of the game, 56 of the game, you should be absolutely heaving for air, the way that they stretch you horizontally and vertically. So if you can take the ball out of their hands, I think that's a key to winning these sorts of games. And Feliciano had a career year last year at right guard, but even so, is he good enough? McKivitz, is he good enough? Brendel, is he good enough? The answer, I think, decisively for all three is probably no, even though Feliciano, I think, is a average starter in this league. So can you get pressure on the right-hand side of that line? Because Williams and Banks, I think, are good enough. Do they bring players up, like you said, Ash? Probably from the bench up. But, you know, it's a lot to ask for Dominic Pooney just to come in and start straight away when I just don't think he's ready. All in all, it's still probably the best roster in the NFC.
Yeah.
But is it the best roster? Or is it the fact that Shanahan makes this roster look as good as it is? I think there's a little bit of both in there. But on defense, you know, Bosa and Greenlaw and Warner and Campbell as a bench player is just amazing. And Ward and Lenore and Green. I can just see this working so well on defense. So they don't worry me any more than last year, but they worried me quite a bit. So,
Yeah.
it is what it is. Anyway, that's San Francisco. Any thoughts on Week 18 against Minnesota, considering we've already covered them?
Not really, no. Just it'll be interesting to see where the NFL slots it because hopefully, fingers crossed, touch wood, all the non-jinxing stuff that I know you don't believe in, but I do. We've already got the division wrapped up here, so we don't need it to be in like a prime time sort of slot on the day because there won't be much interest. It's just going to be probably us either just getting that win that will be like the first or second seed, and Minnesota just chilling. They might be 500 or so. They might be slightly better, might be slightly worse. For them, it's mostly just going to be about draft position. They're in the position we've known all too well the past couple of years. Let's see what they can do to help McCarthy, I guess.
All right, we are now pivoting to talk OTA Week 1 and press conferences. There was a long list of players not available for the Lions. And Dan Campbell had himself a heck of a moment in his press conference when talking about this. He got it out of the way early, and he listed all of the players that were missing. He said that they were either carrying a knock, were injured, or not there for personal reasons. And he said that they would either be out for Week 1, they would be limited for Week 1, they would be on the PUP, they might be available, or they might be just a little banged up and need to be managed. So basically, he said to them, I ain't telling you shit, I'm going to give you all the answers, and it basically means that I'm giving you nothing, but I've covered the question off. The whole press room laughed really hard. I know Jeremy Reisman on the Pride of Detroit Twitter said people might be available or not available, and people took that to mean that it was deadly serious. It was really funny that people took that the wrong way because obviously, clearly, sarcasm doesn't travel per on text, which was just brilliant. But on that list of players that weren't available for some reason or another, they were Alex Anzalone, Terrion Arnold, Kaori Awashika, Derek Barnes, Brian Branch, John Kaminsky, Marcus Davenport, Taylor Decker, Jameer Gibbs, Kirby Joseph, Donovan Knight, Sam Laporta, Emmanuel Mosley, Frank Ragnow, Ennis Rakestraw, DJ Reader, and Nate Sudfeld. That is according to Lions Wire. Thanks to Jeff Risdon for that. So that's all of the people that were missing. And in terms of Week 1 observations, I'm kind of amalgamating this from Tim Twentyman on Lions.com, from Jeremy Reisman on Pride of Detroit, and from Justin Rogers on the Detroit News. But it seemed as though the first couple of days were a bit iffy for the Lions. Obviously, the media weren't there, but that's been alluded to a few times by Dan and by some press people. And then otherwise, chemistry is still a bit of a work in progress for the quarterbacks and receivers. Goff had a big pass to Jameson Williams, which came off Williams' hands. Apparently his ball tracking looks improved, but still couldn't bring it in. It was apparently meant to be seen as a positive thing. There we go. Hendon Hooker apparently had a bit more down than up, but I mean, he's getting second and third team reps, which is great. Otherwise, running backs, I mean, they're not in pads right now, so it's hard to see what happened. But Vaki was with the starters because Gibbs wasn't there. Apparently, he looked really good in the passing game, especially, which is good to see. I mean, there was a big play on a wheel route that you see in cut-ups of his tape in college, and I can imagine that we're going to kind of hammer the usage of him there too, which is good. Tight ends, there's nothing to speak about from all three of these reporters, I do not believe. Shane Zylstra actually got a mention from Justin Rogers. So apparently he caught a good few balls out there and is making a bit of a play to become tight end 3, which will be really interesting if he can make that play, considering that, it's not the highest end tight end room, but it's still competitive with James Mitchell currently in that spot. So let's see what happens there. Wide receivers, I mentioned JMO didn't make that catch, but apparently he just looks like he's a bit more on it right now in terms of it just looking a bit more natural, lining up in the right place and not having to ask people about it and just kind of knowing things a bit more easily. DPJ did have himself a 20-yard gain, apparently, though Anton Green was actually getting the primary work with a first-team offense, not DPJ, which is, I think, interesting in itself. Apparently, the player of the day was by Caden Davis, who actually won himself a spot after rookie minicamp as a UDFA. Did we have anything else on here? No. And I don't think there was anything from wide receivers here either. No. Okay, so moving on to the offensive line. 3 lines in their starters. This is all by Jeremy, so thanks to Jeremy for this. Dan Skipper, Graham Glasgow, Michael Neese, Kevin Zeitler, Penny Sewell. Impressed that Zeitler was there, to be honest. Second line was Connor Galvin, Christian Mahogany, Michael Neese, Netan Muti, and Colby Sorsdal. So that's notable with Sorsdal playing at tackle. And then the third line, Manu at left tackle, Brian Hudson, Kingsley Egwakoon, Matt Farniok, and Colby Sorsdal. I think it's quite interesting that Egwakoon is the centre only in the third line and not the second one. Neese getting the first 2 lines. Hudson not getting run at centre at all in this, but obviously it's just 1 day of camp and it's in pyjamas, who cares? Mahogany only running with the 2s, but both starting guards have turned up, so that's not a surprise. Skipper playing at left tackle is but you know, someone's got to do it when none of the other tackles turn up. Goes to show you the lack of depth that we potentially have in that position and why Manu's been drafted. In terms of defensive line, we were, a bit hammered there with no Reader, Pascal Davenport, or James Houston. So Onzarike got some run with the first team defense. Betts also got some work as the primary jack linebacker. Aiden Hutchinson broke up our pass and apparently brought out the gritty, which is, Aiden's going to be Aiden, I guess. In terms of I won't go to DBs quite yet. McNeil got himself what would have been a sack because Neese apparently managed to misread the play, apparently. Broderick apparently was with the second team on the defensive line despite the number of people out, and he's not quite there yet, but there's a long way to go. Otherwise, linebackers, so Jack Campbell, Malcolm Rodriguez with the first team because Barnes limited and Anzalone out. Campbell apparently got lit up by Amon-Ra St. Brown once, which is not ideal. Don't have anything else from the linebackers in here. Cornerbacks, Arnold and Rakestraw both limited, with Arnold playing a little bit more. Starting lineup was Carlton Davis and Kindle Vildor on the outside with Amik Robertson at the nickel, which I think is quite interesting because I would have flipped Vildor and Robertson considering their skill sets. I know that Robertson physically looks a bit more like a nickel, but he is very much an outside player, and Vildor I think has a skill set to play at the nickel, so interesting for me that they went that way round. Apparently Davis had himself a day, which is really great to see. Robertson also almost intercepted a pass from Hooker. Dorsey and Vildor also had pass breakups. We also had 20man talking about Amik Robertson, saying that he played quite well at the slot position, which is good. Not a huge amount from Justin Rogers, I don't think, on this area of the field. I think he was more on the offense. He said that Terrion Arnold ran some of the half-speed skeleton assignments. That's basically it. In terms of the safeties, he said that Kirby Joseph apparently ran a series of long sprints on the sideline, but wasn't really too much in the lineup otherwise. Jeremy says no Kirby or Branch, so Melafonwu and CJ Moore and Brandon Joseph were the primary guys at safety. Melafonwu has had a interception with the Poole throw from Goff. Backup Lawrence Strickland also almost had the same thing with Hendon Hooker. And then they did some situational stuff, which was converted by the first team after a 52-yard field goal attempt, but the second team didn't quite get there, unfortunately. Ash, any thoughts on week 1 before we get to the presses?
Yeah, not really. Obviously with the safety room, having your basically starters pretty much out. Interesting to see them mixing Brandon Joseph with CJ Moore. That's someone, if you remember from college, not at Northwestern Northwestern was great. Went to Notre Dame and it kind of fell off, except for absolutely breaking Ohio State receiver who shall name nameless. interesting to see them mix in. But for the most part, it's just looking at like the backups, like Niche being the backup centre for basically, it seems, aside from Graham, because you don't want to move Graham. That's interesting. Other than moving Sawster back to tackle, I can see it like with us being so weak there. And I know Jeremy also reported that he played left tackle as well on the Thursday session for a few snaps. It seems he's very much in the mix to be that OT3 now, because Skipper, as I know he's played there, and he's one rep that I definitely remember him playing left tackle for. Went badly, but not for his own fault. Cough, cough, nudge, nudge, wink, wink, you bloody zebras. So still being the OT3 interesting. But yeah, for the most part, it's just same old, same old. I'm waiting to see the pass come on. I really want to see the running backs versus our defensive line. See some of see what Aleem's doing, see what DJ Reader's doing, because that's I can't wait to see Aleem and DJ Reader next to each other. It's going to be so fun to watch. But yeah, and it's nice to see as well Betts getting some work and being the primary jack. I know Houston being out, but nice to see we are giving him that chance, and he's seemingly making some good plays if he's standing out. So that's nice to see from someone who loves the Sam position and wants us to still use it a bit, just not as much as we did last year.
All right. Press conference time. I just want to take this opportunity actually to talk about what's coming up. I mentioned before that we are going to be running a series of pub quizzes, or we would call them pub quizzes. You may just call them quizzes. I'm not sure. There's not too many pubs I know in the US, but anyway. It's going to be a bit of fun in the off season. We are going to run, I think, provisionally 4. We're going to try and make them at a time which is a bit more social for the US. So I think it's going to be Saturday nights I'm going to try and do it, or it's going to be Saturday evenings US time. So 5 p.m. US time, Eastern time, maybe 10 p.m. UK time. It's only 20 questions per quiz. It's going to be on some software that you can log into either on your phone, tablet, or online. We've tested it out. It works fairly well. There's going to be a variety of questions. It's going to be 1 round on the Lions, 10 questions on the Lions, and then 10 questions on the NFL at large. I was going to do general knowledge at the end, but I think that's just too much. I don't think that's going to work very well. I know Ash is hating me for that, but how much American knowledge do I do versus rest of the world knowledge? Because I feel like that's just going to play to some people's strength rather than others, and I don't want to give you an advantage over everyone else. Ash has helped me test the software. He has not seen any of the questions, and so far I've made them all up myself, although I have bought trivia books to help me. It's going to be free to enter. If you enjoy the quiz, I would love it if you guys did donate somehow to the show, because the software has cost us money to actually do it, and there will be prizes. So I think what we're going to do is we'll probably do a $10 gift card at NFL Shop for each individual quiz. And then if you log in to the quiz software with the same email address each time, then we will aggregate your scores, and I believe that the winner of the overall 4 quizzes will net themselves one of the new Lions jerseys of your choice, and we'll send that out to you. So it will be worth logging in for all 4. Obviously, between the software and the shirt and the gift cards, it's not costing us nothing. Believe me, we do not make that back in views. So if you like yourself a quiz, you want to try and compete for some good prizes, would love some donations on that part. I think it's going to start in about 2 weeks' time. So we're looking at maybe Saturday the 8th of June is what we're looking at. I am going to move it if I can't do it, obviously. So, there we go. And I mean, if it goes really well after 4 episodes, I have an idea of potentially doing a Battle of the Pods team quiz between, if I can wangle it, I don't know, if I could talk to like Justin and Jeremy and whatever, and Chris, and just try and get some sort of team stakes going on. Maybe make it a charity thing where any donations in that stream go to a charity or something like that. But this is all very much in the works. The 4 quizzes otherwise are very much going ahead, so we'd love your support for those shows. Right, let's talk press conferences, starting with Dan Campbell, I obviously alluded to the fact that he covered off everyone in the press room, covered off everyone missing to the press room, and being as Dan Campbell as he can possibly be. So he said, that day 2 went better than day 1. Everyone's in good shape. He said that they're kind of way ahead of previous years, talking about the fact that because they got continuity in the coaching staff that, and in the key players, that they're able to see much more easily where they were and where they are, because everyone's aware of that, as opposed to kind of having to start from scratch like some teams are. So JMO is by far the most improved player, although they've really only tested their fundamentals so far, but it's just coming more naturally to him. That's about it for Dan. I mean, he said if you work backwards from being successful in the season and paying dividends up to that point, that it all starts with putting in the work in spring and through camp, and that they've absolutely done their part so far. So that's really encouraging to hear. Also said Terrell Williams is the best defensive line coach in the league, and you can make the argument, that he's definitely up there. And the training camp, especially for Broderick Martin, talking about Terrell Williams, is going to be really key for him to see if he can work his way into the rotation. For Aaron Glenn, he said that it was no surprise to him that the new guys they got in the cornerback room excel in man coverage because it's what they want to do. They're going to put guys in positions that they perform well in, but kind of then pivoted away from man coverage and said that we have a good variety of guys. There's a good variety of what we can do because of the guys that we have, alluding to the fact they can play both man and zone. He said, I love the blitz. It's just a part of me and what I believe in, and that being better in man coverage allows him to do more in that part. On Jack Campbell, he said he's a grown man in terms of being a Mike backer. He lives and breathes green dot mentality. In terms of any increased pressure on him because of increased investment, he just said it's the NFL. If you're not feeling that pressure anyway, then what are you doing? So basically, there's no extra pressure because he's already putting it on himself. Very confident in Marcus Davenport if he remains healthy, big man, violent player. And in terms of just the investment, and it was a very intriguing comment. Maybe of all of the press conferences, this was the one I took the most away from, I think. He said, you're not going to get everything you want every single time in terms of free agency and the draft and what have you. So as a coach, you need to be able to pivot and adjust your scheme to what you have. And we've done a lot of that and will do a lot of that this year. But this year, we've got perhaps more than in previous years, and now it's up to us to play our part. So when you looked at us playing a lot of zone at the start of last year and him talking about the fact that he believes in blitzing and doing press man, that he was being flexible as a defensive coordinator and, believing that was what was going to get the best out of his guys. And that's not just tweaking things. That's a fundamental change. And I gained respect for him in that moment because you do see that there are certain coaches, certain coordinators in this league who will not bend for players. That this is the way we play, and come hell or high water, Patricia, that is the way we're going to play. And I gained a lot of respect for Glenn, even alluding to that and being willing to do that, very obviously too. And I think that perhaps we have overlooked the lack of investment, the compromise he's had to make. And I mean, God, let's just hope that he now has the resources to actually put his full plan in motion in the way that he is as a coordinator. Got Dave Phipp next, who is just an absolute bundle of energy. His nervous laugh in between questions is just so funny. I absolutely love him. He's aware of Jake Bates, congratulates him on having a great season so far, but doesn't seem that interested in him as a player. Talks about James Turner as someone who's got an absolutely massive leg despite his college numbers, and also Badgley has extended his range in the offseason, which is great to hear. Thinks the new kickoff rule is going to be great for the game and the players. He says the players are really excited about it, coming into his office, knocking on the door, asking about how it's going to change things, what the new rules are, how they can get an advantage. In terms of Sione Vaki, he said he's really excited about him. He's a very intense player. Thinks that him playing both sides of the ball in college is going to be advantageous for special teams. And that they don't think they're going to get any more special teams time in practice. They're just going to have to prioritize it when it comes to learning the new rules. So maybe doing a bit more kickoff and kickoff return than they have done in the past. And then on to the players, we have Carlton Davis, who said he hasn't been this excited for a season since 2020, and it's a really competitive environment. He said he's about to, and I quote, lock shit up. He said he's going to play physical and bring the energy. So he's really enjoying the number of people in the cornerback room at a high level this year, says the cream is going to rise. And he said he's never had a defensive coordinator like Aaron Glenn. He's so active and involved, but he's not an asshole. I remember where he's come from and the fact that the former defensive coordinator is now the head coach there. I think that comment was perhaps slightly misguided, but never mind. He said he loves teaching younger players as well. So considering the fact we've got 2 rookies in the room, I absolutely love the fact that he's there, because he said, I can't keep the knowledge for when I'm gone out the league. So, fantastic to hear. Jack Campbell just basically said it's the same old me. I am this guy. He said that the last play in the San Francisco game is eating at him and that it's driving him. He's learned that every play matters, even the ones that people don't really see or look at too heavy, and that he needs to be even more detail-orientated than he was in the past. So he's been working on marginal gains in his game and hoping that adds up to a big difference. And CJ Moore is one of the nicest people he's ever met, which is quite interesting. Talking of which, CJ Moore was next up. Maybe CJ Moore was behind him as Jack was talking. But CJ came on, and of course most of the questions were relating to his gambling suspension last year, and he straight up said, it was tough, but I got some good things out of it. So he took the time to gain more belief in God and get become a better father. They had their second child, and he got married, so he was busy in his time away. He said he was immature, and that's why it happened. He failed to hold himself accountable, and that he shouldn't have been gambling anyway and came up short. He said, I knew the rules, and I was immature, which is refreshingly honest. He said it's like a dream being back, and he's thankful to all the organisation, listed everyone out. Said he was super excited for the team last year, but it was bittersweet not being part of the team doing it. And he said the new rules excites him, increases the value of special teamers being able to do things for the team. And then finally, Jameson Williams, he said, hearing from coach that he was the most improved player so far felt great, because I've been working. He said, I think everyone is due for an uptick on offense with the way that Ben Johnson schemes it up. He said in college you can kind of freestyle a bit, and that in the pros it doesn't fly. So he alluded to the fact in terms of lining up, on the line, off the line, how far away from the snap point, and how far to run your routes and that sort of thing. And that basically he was just a bit immature and wanted to do things his way, and kind of learned that isn't going to fly a little bit. So when people were pointing to potential immaturity, it looks like he's fessing up to that now. In terms of the weight room, they kind of noted in the presser that he was looking a little bit swole, and he said, I've been lifting a little bit, but I'm still the same weight. And on returning, and the potential for him being a returner in the new kickoff rules, he said, I just want to get those receiving touchdowns. So it doesn't look like that is on the agenda for him at the moment. Ash, thoughts on any of those presses for you? I mean, maybe starting with the coaches.
Yeah. Let's start with it seems everyone's favourite interview with all the coaches, and it's the way you mentioned with Phipp. Like, you can see his excitement for special teams coming through. There's a reason why Detroit Lions podcast love him, why Jeremy and that love him by Detroit. Everyone seems to love talking to him because he's so open and honest about things, and you can see his excitement. Like the new rules, the fact that he's usually not seen part of the league, team, and that is suddenly now getting a microscope, and he's there just like, yes, I'm throwing back the curtain. Here's all the tricks and that, and it's nice to see him kind of get his due, because he is one of the best special teams coaches in the league. He was before he came here. He was it with Philadelphia, and they were good as well. And it was just nice to hear him talking. But yeah, I agree, we're probably not going to be interested in Jake Bates. Interestingly, from what I'm seeing on Twitter, he is having a lot of contacts with the Texans. So that will be interesting if that happens, because they've got Fairburn, as we mentioned earlier. That'll be an interesting camp battle. Glenn, we knew with the move to man coverage was coming, and I agree. Having more man coverage will allow you to blitz, because obviously one-on-one coverage, you don't have to dedicate people. It means you can blitz a bit more. And I like his confidence in both Carlton Davis and Marcus Davenport because they're going to be big additions for us. They could be the things that push us over the hill. And yeah, it's nice he's got that mentality that, yeah, he has kind of, I don't want to say he's been shafted, but it seems offense has been the main focus with at least like the big picks. He has had to deal with more third rounders, fourth rounders on his roster than Ben has. So it's nice to see him get some investment. Hopefully it pays dividends. And then Dan's just Dan, isn't he? Like, always great to listen to. And he's always talking about putting in the work and that. And I agree. Troy Williams is the best defensive line coach in the league. Like, if you can stand out on a shit Tennessee team, then you must be really good. So having him hopefully mold Broderick will be very nice to see. And obviously getting working with Aleem, hopefully that'll push him up even more so he can finally get the recognition he deserves, and maybe working a bit with Aiden and that. Be great to see. And then with the players as well. I like the interview with Davis a lot as well. Like, I knew a bit of him, obviously watching him Tampa twice last year. It's nice to see that his personality does seem like a great fit here. So it makes me have a bit more trust in that trade that we put in for him, because technically he was one of our third round picks if you think about it. So good to see that. Campbell, yeah, he's Campbell. JMO, like, I know obviously there was a thing a couple of days ago of his whole Insta story. Just don't look at it in terms of his Insta stuff. Like, he's one of those where it might just be a song lyric and people just didn't get it. Like, I personally don't get it because I probably don't listen to the right kind of music to get those references, but it's just one of them. But yeah, CJ Moore, like, I know I was very high on him before the stuff happened, and I know members of the podcast, the panel, weren't as happy as me when he was brought back. But it's nice to see him sort of holding his hands up, showing the accountability, basically proving that, yeah, it's right. And having him back, just having him, Varkey, and JRM, God knows what Phip's going to be dreaming up on special teams. We're going to see some mad fake punts and that. And he could also get a bit of uptick on defense, like I mentioned a couple of weeks ago. Like, right now, he's probably our safety 3, maybe safety 4, because let's put Branch in there, safety 4. And he showed it before. He's picked off Jordan Love twice, for God's sake. So those latter games where we might need him to play a bit more snaps, he could be a ball hawk for us. So yeah, it was a all-round good routine for the pressers, and be interesting to sort of check in with them as training camp goes on.
Finally, we do have a question from Brent DeWitt. So one question, which was, what changes do you think we'll see in the defensive line scheme? So obviously, Dan did mention Terrell Williams. He thinks he's the best defensive line coach in the league. I don't know if you have any thoughts and whether you thought about him at all, because we obviously mentioned him when we signed him as to whether there's going to be any changes. I think it's difficult to expect because obviously as a defensive line coach, you're going to kind of be led by the overall scheme a little bit. But do you have any thoughts at all? I've got some articles open that I can reference here if you don't have any thoughts.
So one thing we'll probably see a lot, but at least not more of, is, I know we do play it a lot, but those sort of 5-man fronts, because obviously we're technically a 4-man front. Go check my article from like 2 years ago where we made that defensive scheme change for the ins and outs and that. But because Tennessee's a 3-4, we'll probably see a lot more of those kind of things where we might have like packages where it's, I don't know, DJ Reed at the nose. Oh, actually, no, Broderick at the nose with DJ Reed and Aleem either side of him, with then like Aiden and Davenport or Houston standing up as like outside linebackers. That'll be interesting to see. But yeah, for the most part, I think it's going to be, as you say, same old overall in terms of what this scheme is up front, because it's all about aggression and penetrating and that, because obviously we're like a one-gap scheme. But yeah, we'll probably see a bit more of the sort of multiplicity on the defensive front, where we might see a few more 3-4 looks. We might have a few more looks where DJ Reader and Aleem are both lined up more as true DTs rather than nose tackles with shading over the center. It'll be slight little changes and maybe alignments and usages in certain positions rather than we're completely scrapping the front. We're going back to a 3-4 kind of thing.
Yeah, so I'm looking at a few articles. One from Justin Rogers from the Detroit News, although I don't think there's a huge amount there I'm going to reference. There's some from the Tennessee Titans website itself, but also from Alex Kozora from Steelers Depot, I think they're a fan site, but it's a really good report on the Tennessee Titans defense of last year in November. According to Alex, they run a fairly static 4-3 and don't run much in the way of hybrid fronts, which have become common. So I don't know whether he'll have done much where a kind of jack backer is also coming into the fray. In 2022, the Titans had the number 1 rush defense team in the league, and they were a top 10 unit, I think, last year in that as well. They really look to kind of defend the run first, and defend the pass second, which of course is exactly what we did last year. Apparently they're a gap and a half scheme. So, if we are a one gapping team last year, I think we were actually a bit more gap and a half as well. So I actually think that's going to transition really, really well. I don't think there's going to be too much learning between what Terrell does and what we did previously. Obviously, you just have to see what has happened to Jeffrey Simmons, but also, the other players he's helped get paid. I mean, DeMarcus Walker had himself a really good year in 2022, and that helped him get paid. You had Autry, as was mentioned earlier. You had, who else was in here? Defensive line. Autry, I've mentioned. Tyre Tart had himself a great year as a nose tackle. So, yes, like you said, Titans not a good team last year, although kind of frisky with the man they have at quarterback. But what he did manage to do was convert good players to being fantastic players and not so great players into, we're going to pay you because we think there's upside there. So the movement is up, and I think that's where it's going to be, is maybe not revolutionizing the scheme, because I think that's going to come from Glenn. But in terms of what these players might do in their production, I think that's going to go up. One thing that's noted in the article is that despite their sack numbers being above average, that their interception numbers were below average. And doesn't that sound familiar?
Yeah,
sound so familiar. Just to answer Lisa, yes, Sam Laporta jersey came yesterday in the blue. Love it.
So the good news is as well is that Williams has worked with a 4-3 defense as well. In particular, 2016 in Miami, where he had 2 Pro Bowlers with a name that's going to be familiar, Sue at DT, but also Cam Wake at defensive end. So this is, I know obviously he's recently been working the 3-4, but he has versatility to have worked. He has worked with a 4-3 before, and he's made players good. Like, obviously Sue was all what he was, but Wake he had a great season in him. Mario Williams, on sort of down to his career, was great. A name that's going to sound very familiar to some listeners. Nick Williams had a decent year for them, and then obviously got a payday with Chicago, missing a 1-year contract, but he was there. And then looking at some of the linebackers, they traded for Kiko Alonso, and Alonso had a really good year. This is a guy who, his most recent experience has been with 3-4, but he has 4-3 and it's worked before. That was their first playoff berth that they got that year since 2008, and I'd argue it was part because that defense. I'm looking now at the page under Williams' 3-year stint in the Dolphins. Cam Wick tallied 29 sacks, which was the 8th highest total of any player in that period, while Sue got the 8th highest with 15.5, and Wake's 9 forced fumbles, tied for 5th in the NFL during that time period. So this is a guy that knows how to get the best out of his defensive linemen and get them making the plays that impact. I know we said earlier that interception numbers weren't that great, but that's always really good in run defense.
Yeah, I think it goes to highlight that he's done it with up-and-comers as well as absolute stars, because that Dolphins team was full of stars on that defense. So, yeah, absolutely. Right. There are no other questions, and we've been going for a while, so I think I'm going to take this off the air now. So, our next episode, I think, is going to be a round table episode, but I need to actually arrange the people to come on the blooming show. So TBD, it might be something else, but keep your eyes and ears out, and we'll let you know. College Pods is going to be coming back soon. I saw Ant in the chat just saying he's going to be coming back shortly, and there's some chat in our WhatsApp group about the college show, so hopefully that'll be coming back very, very soon. And keep your eyes out for that quiz I mentioned. That's going to be potentially not this weekend coming, but next. Just want to wish you all a good Memorial Day. Hope that it's all gone well for you. I'm sure you'll be listening to it after the event now, but I hope it went well. Ash, thank you for doing this with me. Roar of the Lions UK, YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. I'm sure you'll see the cut-ups of the show on the TikTok. Ash does such a great job with it. Facebook group for worldwide fans is Detroit Lions Fans UK, One Pride Worldwide, and the website rotluk.com. Thank you everyone for listening on the audio show, on the YouTube and Twitch. You are fantastic as always. We'll see you for the next episode, where I'm sure we'll talk more OTAs as well, because I'm pretty sure there's another session of it before minicamp. But for now, let's go Lions, One Pride.
One Pride.
Recording stopped.
And Grandizer has just said we've missed a question. So,
Oh, no.
who are predicted to be last place teams in the NFC? Chicago, Carolina, Cardinals, Giants. Of this list, who has the most potential to have a Cinderella year? Well, it's not the Giants. It's definitely not the Giants.
It's the Bears. As much as Panthers could do it, and Young did show flashes at the end of last season, and I do really like Todd Canales, but they haven't added enough on the offense for me to help Bryce Young this year. Maybe next year, but right now they haven't added enough for me to trust that offense. And obviously they lost their best defensive player by far to the Giants, so it's a transitionary year for them. I think it might honestly be like us a couple of years ago when we brought in Dan, where they show feistiness, but they just aren't enough. And then next year, when they added a few more pieces, they could then start having that Cinderella story. But right now, unfortunately, it's the Bears that have that highest upside.
Quite fun that Grandizer managed to miss the team that was actually last in the NFC. He's got all of the last teams in the other NFC conferences, but Washington Commanders, are you high on their new quarterback? Is that why that you think the Giants are going to be that fourth team? Because I mean, they've got weapons now. They actually invested at wide receiver this year, so I think that the Giants have got a chance, but the Cowboys and Eagles are just too strong. For the Bears, I think that the Packers and Lions are too strong. I am still looking at the Panthers, because Atlanta should have it, but they should have had it last year, and they flattered to deceive. The Saints and Bucks are exceptionally mid. That division is ripe for the taking. If the Falcons don't grab it, can Young sort it out? Can the Panthers sort themselves out? Arizona have had the biggest turnaround in terms of roster and strength, but unfortunately for them, they're in a division with three absolute powerhouses in the 49ers, Rams, and Seahawks. So I would go Panthers and then Commanders of last place teams last year. Then the Bears, then the Cardinals, simply because I don't believe the Bears can beat the Packers or the Lions in a whole season.
Yeah.
But it's a tough one. Josh, you Mercer said, I'm kind of rooting for the Bears to beat up on the Packers. I just feel bad for them at this point. I will take Bears over the Packers. I know that people are saying the Bears fans are insufferable. There are some good Bears fans. I'll just say it now, because we're hopefully going to bring one of them on next week. Fingers crossed, someone that we really, really like. So they're not all bad. But I just hate the Packers. I always have. One of those things. Anyway, right. That was one question extra. Guys, we'll see you next week. Cheers for joining in. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.